Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today, we are joined by Alfred Polizzotto III, who is an attorney and the senior partner at Polizzotto & Polizzotto LLC. Alfred, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Can we start off? Can you tell me just a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Polizzotto & Polizzotto?
Sure. Polizzotto & Polizzotto is a law firm. We're located in Brooklyn, New York. It was originally founded by my father back in the early 60s. I became an attorney and joined the firm in 1990. And that's when it became Polizzotto & Polizzotto. It stayed that way, unfortunately, until Dad passed in 2001. But now I'm lucky enough to have my daughter who's joined me. So I can still say Polizzotto & Polizzotto, and there's two of us here now. It's a general practice. It's community based, but we serve a lot of the metro area here in New York City. We do immigration, we do real estate, we do estate planning, Medicaid planning, divorces, business transactions, and estate administration and probate. So kind of a full service law firm. In addition to my law degree, I'm also a certified financial planner and have a Series 7 and 63 and life insurance licenses as well to better suit and serve my clients.
Wow. It sounds, I was going to say, you talk about full service. It sounds like you wear a lot of hats.
You know what? At times, and it developed over the years. So now it's my 35th year in doing this, where clients had come in the beginning of my career and had different needs, whether it was in handling somebody's estate or they were recently divorced and they needed some assistance in financial planning or obtaining life insurance. So, I then got into those areas to also help serve those clients as well.
Now, is there a main area that you particularly focus on out of all of those?
I really touch on all of them, and being the senior partner here, I guess my focus is on the real estate and the estate planning, as well as for certain clients, the litigation aspects of things as well.
Well, this may be a bit of a difficult question to answer. I'm sorry if it's a bit of a loaded question because, you do handle all these areas. But can you kind of tell me a little bit about the people that you help and some of the pain points and problems that you're helping them solve?
Yeah, you certainly can. The practice had originally developed as a neighborhood practice. We're located in the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn. So, towards the beginning and middle part of the practice, it was dealing with family-based issues, whether it was, divorce or the death of a parent or a loved one, handling their estates, and then the aftermath. And that's where you see a lot of the pain, as you put it, where despite parents potentially making good plans, leaving everything equally to kids, once it was left to them, the children fighting amongst themselves over the spoils, so to speak, and fighting to sell the property when one wants to and one doesn't want to, or taking advantage of each other before the parent died. Those are really the most problematic, areas, other than the divorces.
Right. Well, and I'm curious, we speak with a lot of attorneys on this show. But you're unique in that I think you're the first person that I've spoken to where you were in this situation where it was a generational thing from, father to son to now to your daughter. Is that generational kind of family heritage of passing down this business and being involved in this business? Is there any challenges that come with that? Are there any unique
Yes.
advantages that come with that? Can you share some of those?
Sure. It's there's good and bad that goes along with it. It's great to from the aspect of seeing something that I've worked my whole life on, even before I was an attorney. Starting in the basement, cleaning files, updating books, etc. To see that be able to continue and not just end in a few years or whenever it is that I decide, I want to slow down, to be able to continue to see that have developed from my father to me to now my daughter, potentially my son who's in his last year of law school, is truly something that's wonderful. There are some challenging aspects of it too when you're trying to deal with your child, as my father had to deal with me as well, and it being a more employer-employee relationship rather than in my case, father-daughter relationship.
Right.
So it has its own unique set of challenges.
Right. I imagine there's got to be, you can't talk to me at work like that, Dad. Imagine that there's got to be.
There's some of that, and there's some of, this is your task for tomorrow. Oh, but I don't want to do that. Well, no, it wasn't a request. It was an order. So there's some of that, but that quickly works itself out, and she's doing wonderfully.
That's amazing. Now, you're admitted to practice in both New York and New Jersey, correct?
That is correct.
Are there any challenges that come along with operating across state lines?
More than you might imagine.
Really?
The local practices, for example, in real estate, are vastly different. In a residential real estate transaction in New York, the parties meet with the real estate brokers, they negotiate a price, and then we draw up a contract, and then the inspection has already been done by the time they get to me. So if there are any issues where there were any adjustments, etc., they're worked out before I get it. And then we set our closing date, and there's an on or about. The custom in New York is if I pick a date of April 15th, that doesn't mean we're closing on April 15th. We're going to close somewhere around April 15th.
Right.
Give or take a few weeks or even a month. In New Jersey, it's the opposite. The brokers have the contract of sale signed. The attorneys review it after it's already signed to make modifications, if any. Then they do inspections. Then those inspections are negotiated. And whatever closing date is chosen there is the closing date.
Right.
So if you're not familiar with the differences, it could lead to some stark surprises if you're relying on one set of customs when they're completely opposite in the others. And the other areas where it's vastly different is in the area of Medicaid planning.
Really?
Even though it's a federal program, each state administers it differently. And New York and New Jersey have vastly different rules when it comes to planning before making an application. In New York, for example, you can transfer assets into a trust or to a child as short as 2.5 years and receive home care. New Jersey is 5 years.
Oh, okay.
New York treats income above the required limit where you're allowed to spend it down or use these specialized trusts to help shelter it. New Jersey treats it differently. There's a cap with a different kind of trust. So it's not at all similar, and things I can do in New York, I can't do in New Jersey and vice versa.
Right.
So there are, even though there's only a river separating us, in some cases it seems like an ocean.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm curious, you have a background in accounting, is that correct?
I graduated from Georgetown with an accounting degree, and contemplated at one point in time becoming a tax attorney, getting a CPA and a law license, but I decided not to go that route, and I just used the accounting degree as a good foundation. It helps me when I'm looking at tax returns. It helps me when I'm dealing with business disputes or divorces to be able to analyze financial statements or books and books of account. So it's come in handy a lot.
Right. That was going to be my next question, was how has that impacted your approach to estate and financial planning?
It initially, when I first started, it had given me a great foundation in the estate tax laws, in the gift tax laws, to enable me to come in and kind of hit the ground running. And the fundamentals that I had learned again proved well. Of course, there was continuing education to keep up to date on whatever changes have occurred since then. But the foundations of understanding income statements, balance sheets, tax returns, and how these things are done was immeasurably helpful in a lot of different aspects of my practice.
And you have handled some pretty landmark cases, and I was hoping that maybe you could share with us a little bit about some of the landmark cases that you have worked on and been a part of, and how those cases have sort of impacted your perspective on the legal space.
Again, my practice has been varied, and from time to time we've handled matters in different areas of the law, which have helped shift my focus from time to time to be more particularized in that area. So in some cases we've had some divorce decisions, we've had some business related decisions, and those have helped me develop this more well-rounded approach to dealing with clients. What's been common, I think, to all of them has been never taking anything for granted in any case, starting from the beginning and analyzing everything. In one of the cases that we had dealt with, I recall that there was the parties were fighting over a contract, and there were some larger firms that were involved, and they were all arguing over the merits of the dispute. And when I looked at the contract, just with fresh eyes, it had already expired. And everybody kind of overlooked that fact when they were arguing over, the merits. So it taught me never assume anything in anybody's case, and to approach it freshly. It would be hard for me to go through each of those cases where we've been cited and reported, and it would far exceed the time we have now to get into details. But just suffice it to say that, with my practice, it's been one in which we've been willing to get into whatever the client needs, even if it's an aspect that we're not typically focused in. It's one that when working with the client, we can get involved in and help them to the best of our ability.
You have over 3 decades of experience. Are there any changes in the elder law space that you have seen in those 3 decades? And I guess the second part of that question would be, are there any emerging trends that you are seeing kind of on the rise right now that families should be aware of?
Yeah. I mean, there have been changes which are occurring even as we are speaking. In New York, for example, I talked earlier about the ability to plan in advance as parties, as seniors get older, to protect their assets in case they get sick. And The troubling part about dealing with seniors is that the way our systems are developed between Medicare and Medicaid, it's almost a game of roulette on what kind of illness you're going to get and whether you're covered. If you spin the wheel and it turns out that it comes out on cancer, well, congratulations, you're covered under Medicare for most of your care. But if you spin that wheel and it comes up Alzheimer's, well, you still have Medicare, but you're not covered for a lot of your needs, whether it's care at home or in a facility. That fundamental difference in coverages, depending upon what you happen to get sick with, is why I kind of got involved in the elder law area. That was fundamentally unfair to me. And so when people will sometimes complain, oh, you set up these trusts for people to protect their assets and make everybody pay for it, and my answer is the same. Well, it's not fair that they got penalized just because they got the wrong illness.
Right.
So in that area of planning is where the most changes have occurred. It initially, when I first started, it was there was a 3-year waiting period to get benefits in a nursing home, for example, if you transferred it to an individual, but 5 years if you transferred it to a trust.
Right.
That shifted later on, and then during the Clinton administration, they actually made it illegal to give advice on the topic.
Wow.
That was soon invalidated by litigation. It's being against the First Amendment. And then we got to 5-year penalties for both transfers to individuals and to nursing homes.
Wow.
That has stayed the same until now. What changed in New York is up until COVID, if you had money or assets in your name and you transferred it to an individual or to a trust, there was no waiting period to get care at home. That has been changed to a 2.5-year waiting period. And that 2.5-year waiting period is on the books, but hasn't been implemented because of COVID. There were various reasons why they couldn't implement that because of different statutes. It still hasn't gone into effect in New York yet. So as we speak, you could still make a transfer today and be eligible tomorrow for home care benefits. But at some point in time during this calendar year or next, it will kick in. That's one area in which there's been changes. There have been other changes, the trusts that have been used to protect these assets. There have been changes in the taxing of them. Various rules as far as the basis that you inherit assets and whether you'll have a capital gains on it. If a trust isn't drafted properly, you could find yourself on the wrong end of a tax bill when it comes time to sell those assets. And there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Right.
Clients tell me that there's a 7-year waiting period. That's a common misconception. Others, because of recent changes from the IRS, that no trust will give a tax benefit. And those are not true. Carefully drafted trusts done well, hopefully sufficiently in advance, can provide protection. But these areas are always changing.
Right.
So, in answer to your question, it seems like it's a constant flux, and understandably so. The government's trying to rein in the Medicaid budget, and long-term care costs are an ever-growing portion of it. Does baby boomers get into that?
Right. Can you share with us, now this might be another one of those big loaded questions, and if it is, I apologize. This might also be peeling back the cover a little bit too much. But could you share with us some of the strategies that you utilize to navigate the complexities of real estate transactions in our current market?
Sure. Obviously, we have two different aspects of the real estate market. There's the residential and the commercial side. With the residential side, there's not too much peeling back that we need to do. clients will do their inspections, will address, open permits or violations, or, potential solar panel contracts that are going along with it. And those are kind of vanilla.
Right.
Require too much. When you get into more of the either multifamily, apartment, commercial type purchases, the key to most of these transactions is the due diligence.
Right.
And making sure that we've got as much covered as we possibly can before entering into the transaction. Making sure that the environmental, issues are covered. Making sure that if it's a multifamily, that all the apartments were properly registered, the rents were collected, the violations were taken care of. In the local laws that we have to navigate on commercial deals, there's requirements that plumbing be inspected every certain number of years, making sure those were all done. So navigating all the local laws and doing your due diligence is really the key.
Right.
Once we get past that, it goes relatively straightforward. You look at the leases, you make sure that they're up to date. You want to be on the lookout for making sure you obtain these things called estoppel letters, that all the tenants' leases are in effect, that there's no violations, and make sure the client's actually gone and visited it. Spend some time at the place to make sure that what was told to them by brokers, brochures, or the internet is accurate.
Right. I'm curious, everything today, there's so much talk about, AI. What impact do you think emerging technologies like AI are going to have on the legal industry?
I think they're going to be significant. They're already making inroads. The major research companies, whether it's LexisNexis or Westlaw, the two, I guess, biggest platforms out there, each have their own AI product already.
Oh, wow.
Each one is proprietary to itself. And even though they're in their infancy, they're still fairly powerful. It's the best thing that it's done so far is it's gotten us away from having to structure search terms artificially, search for this word or this term within the same sentences, this term within so many words. So you can ask a logical question and it will give you a response.
Right.
It's not quite there when it comes to feeding it documents and having it analyze those documents and give you some kind of conclusion.
Right.
It's not there yet. If you were to send me a lease or a contract of sale and it make the appropriate changes to protect the client, I tested it personally. Right. And I fed in a contract that another attorney had sent me, and I wanted to see what it would come back with.
Yeah.
And it came back with some generic changes, but nowhere near the changes that I was incorporating into that same contract. And I wouldn't expect it to yet. It's not going to be educated yet in local practices and customs and certain clauses that only experience is going to teach you.
Right.
So it's going to be helpful. It does do the mundane, the routine already. It's only a matter of time before it learns enough to be able to get those nuances down. So I think every year it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of it. I don't think it's ever going to fully replace lawyers, especially when you're getting in the litigation aspect of it. As much as people may not want to hear. A lot of it's theater.
Mm.
A lot of it's also being an actor and getting that jury or the judge to like you better than the other.
Right.
There's still the ability when you're litigating against somebody to maybe intimidate them or maybe knock them off their game or,
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to have robots, pleading our cases and a robot judge.
Right. I was going to say that's very 1984-ish. That sounds dystopian.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's where ultimately the creators would like it to get to, where you have, I guess, in a sense, blind justice,
Right.
Hold dispassionate. That's it. This is what it is. And it doesn't matter what you have to say otherwise. Remember the laws, there's two aspects of the law. There's what they call the remedies in law and remedies in equity. And the equity portion of things is always a balancing of fairness.
Mm.
I don't know how that gets incorporated into an AI model.
Right. Right. We have talked a bit about your practice, but as the show's winding down here, I'd like to talk a bit about you. One of the things that you failed to mention at the head of the show, you said all of these different practice areas that you practice under and all these different things, did not mention author. Can we talk a little bit about your book?
Sure. I was, I guess, lucky enough to participate in submit a portion of a book that dealt with real estate transactions in New York. And in connection with that, essentially I walked through the process that I employ in looking at a real estate transaction, some of which we touched on earlier. And it was, it was written for attorneys in the area, and I was one of three people who contributed to that. My portion again was having to do with the real estate transactional part of things.
That's awesome. Can you tell us, this is another one, maybe a big one, but when you think back, 3 decades of doing this, when you think back on all the people that you have helped throughout your career, is there a story that stands out in your mind as to someone or maybe a business that you really saw a positive transformation in as a result of your help and guidance?
Wow. There have been, yes. One that sticks out was an elderly woman who came in who was involved in a dispute with one of her children, her sons. They had lived next door. She was having a dispute with him, and she wanted to move. She wanted to leave. She didn't want to live next door any longer. And because of their common ownership of each other's property, he was not allowing it. He wasn't agreeing to sell. And he was abusive. He was, I believe, physical with her at one point. And he had an arrogance about him, and so did his attorney. And after litigating that case, where he even tried to have a guardian appointed for her, we were successful in defeating him at the guardianship level, requiring him to have to pay for the costs, getting the property into her name alone, allowing her to sell, get away from him, and settle down elsewhere, and to be where she is now, happy.
Wow.
That really highlighted so many different aspects of the areas in which I practice. We handled everything from drafting her own wills through the litigation, through the guardianship, through the sale of the property, the purchase of the next one, how to handle her surplus funds. That to see that come about and see her, the stress from her be relieved when everything was going her way as the case unfolded, made me happy to do what I was able to do for her. And it's that kind of service for the client that, you really do this for. You don't just do this to send out a bill and get a fee. You want to help.
Alfred, this has been an amazing conversation. If anybody out there listening could use your help, could use the help of the firm, or would like to read the book, where can the people find you?
You can find us online on my website, which is www.polizzotto.com. That's probably going to give you all the other avenues in which we can be reached. Because on that, you can then send links to my email, call the office, and schedule appointments. We do both in office and, especially since COVID, virtual appointments. And I've dealt with clients really almost nationwide who have either clients or family within the New York metro area.
Well, Alfred, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Alfred, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Be well.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.